prayer and we'll call the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning with humble hearts as we look to do county business. I pray you give us wisdom and discernment as we do our business. Help us to be good stewards of all that you've entrusted to our care, Lord. We thank you for this country. We thank you for this place. Just allow us to be good stewards of what you've given to us, dear Lord. We praise you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Very good.
Morning, everybody. Call the meeting to order. So look for a motion for approval of the claims and minutes.
So moved. Bob Conley?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote this morning.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Groninger, aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Next on our agenda this morning is Matt Sandy, Area Plan, has a couple items of business for us this morning.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Matt.
First one I'm going to start with fairly easy. We participate in the, as you know, National Flood Insurance Program, but we also, as a side program, we participate in the Community Rating System. That is a program that gives us extra credit and discounted insurance for activities that we complete. Those activities include notifying folks about the flood ratings, notifying folks about areas that may have higher flood risks, those type of things. Historically, in the past, in identifying our repetitive areas, those areas that get flooded a lot of times, back to back, we've been provided that data. Originally, it was provided to us, just sent to us a list. Then they sent it to on a CD. Then we had to request it. That process has now changed, and that data used to be held by the Insurance Service Office. FEMA's taken that data back, and they are now the administrators of that. Because it's coming from them, they require us to get basically a sharing agreement for the data so that they can release it to us, making us aware that we're only to use it for what it is, because some of it is insurance data that's not publicly released, only for administrative matters. So that's the thing. First thing that we have for you is that agreement that basically says, yes, we're going to follow the rules and not release data we're not supposed to open that up so that they will send us that updated information. And that's a 3-year agreement with them.
3-year agreement.
Yep.
Okay.
So that it has no regulatory behind that. It's just
Right.
making that
Just
agreement.
having access to that information.
Correct.
Okay, and you need for us to,
I need a motion and then just a signature, and they have a, okay, yeah, it just takes the president's signature.
okay. I'd make the motion, we do that, the agreement with FEMA to share the access on information.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote this morning.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Groninger, aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next.
Next thing I have for you is a lot bigger than that first one. What we're bringing to you is a comprehensive ordinance amendment to our flood control regulations. Historically, through the years, there have been changes that happen, and they're spurred on as the program follows FEMA, DNR, us. DNR is our overseer. They adopt the state side of it and then pass it along to locals that participate with the National Flood Insurance Program. So what has happened is there have been some changes both at the federal and state level. So they've created a new model ordinance, and they pass those to the communities. We've gone through that model ordinance and have drafted it to adopt the changes that were listed, basically, in that. It goes through the whole ordinance. I know I had sent you guys kind of a highlights list of what that was. Those include, well, one of them was ours, because since our last ordinance, Town of Leesburg joined us. And they do have a little bit of flood zone. It gets into some of the verbiage for the general purpose and objectives, which really has no regulatory. It's just laying out the basis for the ordinance. Changes definitions that are either no longer relevant or needed for other sections that were added. Talks about our permit procedure and clarifies some of the activities we are doing now, just making them more solid in the ordinance. One of the biggest changes, and this is the one that I got the most discussion at Planning Commission, was a cumulative improvement requirement being removed. So what essentially is those homes in a flood zone that predate our map, so that would be prior to 1987, are considered grandfathered in. However, as they make changes, FEMA and the state has said, okay, we'll allow you to do so much up to a certain point, but after you hit that point, we want you to bring that structure into compliance with the flood regulations. That can mean adding vents or as extreme as raising a house. So you can make improvements, slowly work along. And in the past, it's morphed from, at one point, it was a one-time and done, no matter how much you spent, so 500 or 5,000. Then we went to a cumulative, so meaning that we're going to track and calculate that up till it hits the 50% mark. That has been, I'm going to say, eased back. So what we've done is remove that cumulative to give us the ability to look at each project as a shot by itself, not adding the past projects into it, which ultimately will open up more potential improvements. Now, they still have that threshold of 50% in there. So if they go beyond that, we're still at the same point we were before, but we're not adding everything together.
Right.
And it is a slight gradual scale because we all hope as time goes, our home values improve, so that value goes up and it balances itself out. Other stuff that we looked at changing were talking about mechanicals. There used to be a allowance to flood-proof mechanicals in a structure, so your ductwork, that type of thing on a residence. That's been revoked by FEMA, and getting into some other clarifications with pilings and fill and the other developments that happen that we have to issue permits for by FEMA's definition. So we can go more in depth on any of those. I know you've had a chance to look at it and ask some questions. Ultimately, it was passed on to you as the commissioners with an 8-to-1 vote from the Plan Commission to adopt. So, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I know it's a lot to take in comprehensively.
Matt, because I know Brad probably wants to say some stuff about it too, but question I had, I know I've had a couple of people come to me on some situations where they wanted to build in a floodway, and then they were having to do some soil compaction testing, and even, I think in one case, a hydrology study as far as how that water was gonna move across the property with this fill in there. Is that part of this ordinance, or?
That's been part of the ordinance, and that was the section that didn't change. So what you're talking about, in two different standards when it comes into play. We have floodways, which are typically associated to moving water, your ditches, your streams, your rivers, and floodplains. Most restrictive would be the floodways, and I know that probably the same one you're talking about. If you fill in a floodway, it has to go through the DNR to get approval, and what happens at that point is they have to look at compaction, but even more so, the DNR requires a hydrology study to show it did not create a higher impact. If we're just in a floodplain, then we're looking at just the compaction requirements, and the theory behind that is, great, we build our house today on fill. If it wasn't properly compacted, it could settle pretty substantially. They require us to document that through and keep track of it. So when we get audited, which we do, we get audited, short audits once a year, major audits every 3 to 5 years. And they come in and look at our permits to see what we've got and make sure we have all the associated documents attached to it. Fill reports, elevation certificates, that type of thing. So yes, that is still part of this. That part did not change. The only part with it that did change is clarifying that pilings, even though you may fill with a piling, it's not fill. That's just filler between the pilings. Your pilings are what's sustaining the house or structure, so that doesn't apply to those standards.
So Matt, you're saying if you have pilings, you don't have to do the compaction and all that testing?
Correct, because hopefully your piling's in well enough, you're never going to sink. That's the whole purpose of those pilings, and I'm talking to the choir here, but the fill isn't doing anything to elevate the structure or hold the structure up. It's just filling in those vacant areas beneath. So
It's basically a concrete form until the concrete dries.
Exactly.
The fill is.
Yep.
Okay. And Carrie's right. I did have a question or a comment, whatever. Part of it too, my understanding is that the DNR now would have some say over floodplain elevations around ditches. That is correct, isn't it, Matt?
Right, so.
County regulated drains.
Yep, so in the ordinance, and there's been a section in the ordinance that's always talked about high or unknown flood areas or high flooding areas that may have the potential to flood. What happened, and this has been 3 or 4 years ago, we got our new maps in 2015. After that time, the DNR initiated a project on their own to go through the state and map a lot of these unmapped areas. There may have been a flood zone associated to it that FEMA didn't map, so they went back, mapped out these areas, and those areas became best available flood layers. So our ordinance says we're supposed to regulate the floodplains with the best data possible. That goes back, DNR has said the best data possible in those areas there's not a FEMA map is the best available flood layer. So we essentially work off of 2 flood maps when it comes to regulation. Remember, there's 2 sides to the flood program. There's insurance side, regulatory. Insurance side only looks at the flood insurance rate maps. We are required to look at the best available flood layer, which is the one you're talking about there. So even though the flood map from FEMA may not show a flood zone, the DNR may have, through their study, adopted a flood mapped area. And 90% of those they've established a rough based flood elevation to work off of. There are still some areas that don't have those base floods, and we still have to submit to DNR to try and get that established. But that's that layer, and you're talking about primarily going along ditches, because most of our major rivers and lakes have been studied.
I just know, if I'm thinking properly, the one in Syracuse, when we had all that problem up there with proposed flood, that to me was a lot of negligence on their part in their engineering, and caused a lot of unnecessary problems. And then also the fact that then it's up to the property owner to prove that their information is incorrect that they came up with. I have a huge problem with that.
Yeah, and we do see that. I've seen circumstances where that's come about, that through using a surveyor, they've been able to prove that, no, I'm not. So yeah, that has come up.
Well, that seems to be the issue with the surveyor. I've talked with him about this flood ordinance. Even though we did vote 8-1, there have been some areas of contention that we think needs to be further delineated or discussed and worked out. And I think rather than pass this ordinance, I think we need to take a harder look at it. So I'd make a recommendation that we, in keeping with some of Brad's concerns, that we table this vote until we get a chance to examine that a little closer.
Okay.
So,
Matt, as far as, I think the main thing that, at least what I'm hearing, is causing the most angst is these almost additional jurisdiction or additional areas that the DNR is, because you have to go by that map, that now you're gonna have to look at that from a floodplain perspective.
Right.
To be able to change any of that, that's a state level issue, correct? That's not
Correct.
something we can do at a local level?
Correct. That's a state level issue that the DNR has adopted those and made those part of the floodplain regulations. So just like if we have a floodway that's only the DNR's, they still require you to go through all the floodway regulations at the state level. So yeah, it would take the state, either through legislation, rule change, something like that, to say, no, those are no longer valid. Only the firms would be what would go by.
Is there a way, I mean, we would have to, in a county, that we can verify that information? I mean, these additional flood areas that the DNR is now classifying or taking jurisdiction of? I mean, I struggle when I see government taking more control of our property owners' property.
Ultimately, if we wanted to go through and verify those areas, we'd have to pay for an engineer to study all the mapped areas. And there's hydraulic studies, and this is getting way outside my pay grade, but with the engineering, they actually have to do hydraulic studies on each one of those stream zones. And then with that data, that's what they could then say to the DNR, we don't feel your flood zone is right, here's the data that we use. There are specific criteria they'd have to follow. So that is an option. I know some areas in the state have hired private engineering firms. I don't know to challenge these maps, but other areas that need studied.
Do you know, I mean, just from a magnitude of scale of like how many additional acres do you think
Ooh.
that that's impacting in our county? I mean, is it 10,000 acres or is it 10 acres? I mean,
Probably closer to a higher number than a lower number, yeah. Because there was a lot of new streams that were studied. Specifically, we saw a lot of area and ground up in the northwest put into floodplains that were never in there previously. That's a number I could definitely come up with. I don't have it off the top of my head, though. But it was a larger area that came into play.
I think Brad's wanting to say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My understanding, just to bring this to light in a public meeting, when we had the situation up at Syracuse Wawasee area, is that when they did their engineering or their study, they didn't even calculate the capacity of the lakes to hold water during a rain event. And I just can't support that. I mean, I have a huge problem supporting something like that. So, and Bob, with your motion, do you want to send it back to Plan Commission? Is that what you're saying for further review, or just more time for us to review it?
A little bit of both. I think the surveyor's office had some real issues with surveying, things that were impacting his office and the way they would do things. And I think the best thing is just take a look at it, iron those things out. If there's, find out what the issues are and address those issues and then bring it back, so.
Okay, I would second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote again this morning.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Carrie Groninger, aye. That'll get tabled and sent back to area plan, as well as some additional deep dive by the commissioners to confirm. So Matt, appreciate you.
Yeah.
I know there's some really good stuff in that bill,
Right.
and cumulative and some
Yep.
other things that I really think will help some of our residents, but I guess that those elevations, and if there's a way we can maybe get a idea of the magnitude of impact and some other things,
Yep.
I think would just be helpful for us. We can make a better informed decision. So,
Sure, I'll try and get some acreages around. I can email that to you, just give you an idea of what kind of scope of area it's taken in. And then definitely we'll touch base with Mike. Now, one thing I will say too, I probably should have started this with it. The way this process will work is our ordinance, once it's adopted, still has to be blessed by DNR and FEMA once it's adopted. So they check to make sure it's compliant at the state and federal level, and that's where it goes from there. So
Right.
typically, any changes that we'll make to it, I'll send to the DNR. Why go through the hearing process until we
Sure.
know for sure? So,
Right.
Well, one of the issues I have is, if you'd have driven down my road a month ago, everybody's driveways was flooded and their lawns had water standing on it. I mean, I can see this thing going to a point where somebody takes a picture of that and you're automatically in a floodplain because you got water standing in your front yard.
Right.
I mean, it happens every spring when we have rains and the snow melts, but I could see where this whole thing could go in a direction that's totally untenable for everybody. So,
and what I'll do is follow up with the DNR too, try to find out what it would take to challenge the best available data, which I think is maybe one of the highest concerns, so.
yeah.
Right, yeah, I think that's definitely what's causing the most angst. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a, just so we know from a
Yep.
commissioner perspective, I know you've got an audit coming up, is that in the fall? I want to make sure
Right.
we're not causing you,
Sure, so our audit date has been set for September, I believe it is. We get, our renew date's February, typically once a year, but our audit is set for September. So, the changes that would make us out of compliance would have to be addressed, otherwise we don't get credited for those in the ordinance. If it's totally out of compliance with FEMA, then that can affect other things, but, so we've got time-wise that way, to work, so.
we'll just make sure we're not
Yep.
causing you stuff or
Creating problems for
on the
ourselves.
backside. So,
Yeah.
And as soon as I get some good answers back, when we're with all that data, I'll let you guys know too, and pass it along to all parties involved.
Appreciate you coming in.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda is ARPA Fund Committee recommendations. So this morning I don't see Cheryl here. I guess I can talk a little bit about that. I know that we talked some, I know this has been in front of the ARPA committee and the council. Pretty much this is a program, Launchpad, which is hosted underneath the local chamber, Consciousness County Chamber. Cheryl's charge of that, and she had requested some money from the ARPA committee, and pretty much this is to help pay for some of the back room expenses or training that some of these child cares, some of the small child cares, especially in our community that are lacking. You know, and this would allow them, I think it was $25,000 for the next 4 years to help fund the person to be able to help them with the training and services they would need to be able to maybe get in compliance with the state and or just help them kind of navigate the ropes of how they can become a child care provider in our community. So I think having that person to help walk some of these smaller child cares through that and making sure they're doing everything they can, that we're creating safe environments for our children to be cared for in the county is a really good thing that we can support and move forward with. But look if you'll provided a motion to move forward with that funding, this would be paid for out of the ARPA funds that we've received. And with the ARPA funds, we're always looking for that county-wide impact that can impact everybody in our community, not just a specific community. And that's one of the things we liked about this, is it was a county-wide initiative. So
We, just on a personal basis, we have a daycare at our church, and it's full. They've got a waiting list, and you just cringe when you see these families that are in such need to be able to support themselves by keeping their job, to be able to have to decide whether or not they stay home with their child or they go to work. And they use the word a child care desert for Kosciuszko County, and that's distressing. But if we can do something to help these startups and get more daycares, quality daycares, and assist the smaller daycares continue to operate at the level they need to operate at, if this is a small contribution to that. And I'd make a motion that we accept $25,000 a year for 4 years.
Second.
we got a motion and a second for that one. I look for a roll call vote, please.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Carrie Groninger, aye. Okay, motion carries. Okay, next on our agenda, Marcia, you've got 4 items there for us, so some other ARPA spending.
Yes, and all 4 of these items have been through the process. They've been to the ARPA committee and been approved. The recommendation was full approval to the council, and now it's the last stop at the commissioners. So the first item is the Justice Building Fire Alarm System for $200,000. The fire alarm system that we have is functional, but a lot of the parts are becoming obsolete. So as those items become obsolete, we need to look at replacing the entire system in the Justice Building. That would cover the jail as well. You want to vote, or do you want to go through
Can
all
we
of them?
vote on, we need to vote on these individually or all together? Does it matter? I think that we can
Okay.
vote for all of them.
Okay, next is the jail showers. What this is a quartz flooring that we put in the showers of the cell blocks in the jail. And then the walls are a sealed coating. The blocks are porous, so this helps with maintaining the showers in the building itself. 4 years, 2017, we did one of the blocks, and this has maintained its look, and it has saved a lot of wear and tear on the showers as far as the water seeping into the structure itself. So we propose to do the remaining jail showers.
Okay,
Okay.
Next one is this is for IT. This is a cybersecurity enhancement, the Sophos MTR. What this does, let me just say that this is like approximate $70,000 project, and $40,000 of that is going to be paid for by a grant that we went through the EMA for Homeland Security. So we have a grant for $40,000, and the remainder of that will be paid from the ARPA funds to complete that project. So this gives us actual bodies monitoring our systems, the cybersecurity for any kind of lapse or any kind of interruption as far as any kind of cybersecurity breaches. So they're looking forward to getting this accomplished and completed just to the
This was a 3-year.
3-year, yeah,
contract.
3-year. And then the tower connectivity project, this is related to our public safety communications project. We have worked with REMC, Kosciuszko Connect, and we're very pleased that they've been willing to work with us. This gives us total redundancy in our towers. This will connect REMC fiber when they get to around to each of the 3 major towers in the county for the system. Will connect fiber to those towers, and then the system itself will be redundant with the microwave as well as the fiber connection.
That's awesome. That's a tremendous, we're just blessed to have this kind of income or this kind of money come to us. And each one of these have been well thought out, and they're necessary. So I make a motion that we accept all 4 of these recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do a roll call vote, please.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Groninger, aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, next on our agenda this morning is any office holder or department head have anything to bring before the commissioners this morning? County Attorney, Ed?
No public report.
Okay. Marcia, you got a few things for us?
Yes, I do. First up is the annual plan maintenance quotes. This is an annual agreement that we bid out to meet our procurement policy requirements. I had 2 companies respond with quotes: Core Mechanical Services for $21,337 and MCore for $24,036. That's a difference of $2,699. This services all of our HVAC units in all the county buildings, the boilers, a one-time a year, the split systems that we have in the different areas. So that covers all of the maintenance for those systems. I would like to recommend Core Mechanical Services for the $21,337.
Look for a motion.
Make a motion.
Make that motion.
I second Brad's motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote this morning.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Groninger, aye. Motion carries. Okay, next on your agenda, Marcia.
Okay, the jail shower coating project that we just discussed this will be paid out of the ARPA fund. It's a pretty specialized system that is applied to these showers. Northern Industrial Flooring submitted a quote of $116,554.52, and the other company, Preferred Inc., out of Fort Wayne, that we requested quotes from, declined to bid at this time. So with Northern Industrial Flooring be the company that we worked with in 2017, I'd like to recommend that we accept that bid.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Groninger, aye. Motion carries. Then lastly,
Okay, furniture quotes. We had 3 different areas that require new furniture. We sent out quotes and had 2 companies that came in, KDA Furniture and Business Furnishings out of South Bend. The quote for all 3 areas for KDA Furniture was $24,051.66, and the Business Furnishings for all 3 areas was $25,790.03. This meets the
3 cents.
requirements of our procurement policy for the bidding process, and I'd like to recommend that we accept the bid from KDA Furniture for the $24,051.66.
go ahead.
I'll make the motion, we accept the recommendation of KDA.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Groninger, aye. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's.
Okay, next this morning, we got Michelle Puckett. What do you have for us this morning, Michelle? Thank you.
Good morning,
Good
Michelle.
morning. I have a few different things today. As we're gearing up for our budget process for 2023, first thing on our calendar is the cumulative funds. So we have 2 separate CUME funds. We have CUME Capital Development and CUME Bridge. Each one of those funds are rate-driven, and as part of our budget process each year, those rates tend to get adjusted down a little bit in the calculation of our total tax rate. So what we like to do at this time each year is advertise to reestablish those rates at the statutory limit where they were previous to that adjustment. So this is not a new tax. This is part of our budget process, and it does give us the flexibility during that process. If we are able to budget more for Cume Bridge, we have the ability to do that because we've reestablished that rate. And same as CCD, it puts it back to where we originally had set that.
Okay.
So I don't need a motion today. I'm just here to inform you that we're going to go forward. I'm sorry. I don't need a motion, but I do need your approval to go forward with the advertising of this. And at your next meeting, we will have the resolution prepared for the commissioners to sign.
Michelle, a question I have on the Cume Bridge. I mean, I know that we've got a lot of bridges that are needing a lot of work, and I know that Steve's been doing a great job trying to leverage some of the NDOT funds to where we're, you know, it's kind of an 80-20, so it's a 20% match that the county's having to pay. But I know we've talked in the past on whether or not we needed to try and adjust that at Cume Bridge to try and maybe get a few more dollars in that account to be able to cover some of these bridges, because we all know construction costs are continuing to rise. At what point, if we wanted to do that, or is that a council decision? I guess I'm not trying to get out of my lane here either, but I'm hearing from Steve and being in that industry, I realize that that's an ongoing.
Absolutely. The Cume Bridge rate is within our max levy.
Okay,
So what we do this time of the year is we reestablish it at the maximum rate.
okay,
So that way, during the budget process, the council can have the conversation, how much can we afford to fund this? Because if we fund Cume Bridge at a higher level,
Yeah,
we would
something
have
else
to
has
make
to-
a reduction in county general, the health department reassessment.
right.
So that's the balancing game that we have at that time. But if we do not go through this process to reestablish it, it will not be an option
Right.
to be able to even have that discussion during the budget session.
Okay. Thank you. So we're looking for just a motion.
By consensus?
By consensus,
Oh,
please.
okay. Well, yeah, I think
I support that.
definitely support.
I do as well.
Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next thing I have on the agenda is the KCCRVC 2022 interlocal agreement. I did bring this to you at the last commissioners meeting to seek approval on the terms of this agreement. And after that, I presented it to the KCCRVC Commission. They approved it, as did the county council unanimously to support the terms of this agreement. The biggest change in it previously was that there will be an annual fee of $500 to help supplant the county's expenses in me doing this work for them, as well as fill in the gaps for any additional support that I can give them. So I'm officially bringing this to you for your approval today.
Okay.
Need a motion for that?
Yes, please.
I would make the motion. We accept that terms of agreement and the $500.
Second,
So we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Bob Conley, aye.
Brad Jackson, aye.
Gary Grunier, aye.
All
Motion
right,
carries.
thank you.
Very good.
Thank you,
Keep up
Michelle.
the good work.
Okay, next on the agenda is Steve. I know he's not here, but Marcia, did you have something you were bringing for him this morning?
Yes, I
He's
do.
down at
Steve and
Road-
his crews at Road School.
Yeah,
so-
Road School.
Yes, they're at
Yeah.
Road School, and
They're not
Steve is
slacking there.
presenting today,
They're
so
not slacking.
proud moment for him. As you know, the highway's been trying to bid out trucks, and today they have a recommendation to purchase a 2022 Ram SSV Crew Cab 4x4 from John Jones Police Pursuit Vehicles for $46,530. And this is not the lowest bid, it's the next to the lowest bid due to the fact that the lowest one did not meet all the specs that were
couldn't get
required for this vehicle. So that is the recommendation.
And I know right now vehicles are, municipal discounts are
Yep.
being
It's crazy. Taken away.
voided and other things. So I know that, I think this is something, I think they said they can have. even
April, May, yeah, into
timeframe
April
too,
1st of
so-
May. So availability is pretty good with this.
And this kind of a secondary thing, because he checked with all the local dealers that had trucks that were available or could be available, and there was costs associated with that they could offset. because the companies would allow them municipal discounts. Well, those discounts went away, and the price of the trucks went from like 46,000 to 60-some thousand or something. It was an astronomical number. So he continued to look and went through the sheriff's department, and where the sheriff's department purchases their equipment, that's where he got this available. So I'd make a motion, we accept his recommendation.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote this morning, please.
Bob Conley, aye?
Brad Jackson, aye.
Carrie Gruninger, aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Anything else for him for this morning, Marcia?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're past our 9:15 timeline, so Dan, you've got a petition for us this morning?
Yes, I do. Good morning.
Good morning, Dan.
Dan Richard with the Area Planning Commission. I have one report and recommendation for you today. Requested rezoning by Greg Kralis to rezone 10 acres from an agricultural to an agricultural 2 zone. And I'm guessing he's approaching you with a map of where the property is located. It's just off of, head southeast out of Oswego. And the road, Pound Road, if you take it to the east, then makes a series of curves. And it's just about across the road from where Magical Meadows is. So not that far out of Oswego to the southwest, or southeast, I'm sorry, 10 acres. They've exhausted all their allowed sell-offs in that area. And the petitioner is requesting a rezoning from, again, agricultural to agricultural 2. It is a 10-acre tract of ground, and I've always wanted to do this. Brad, how's the detail? Can you see okay here?
I can see it, not a lot of detail.
Kidding, okay. Unanimous recommendation from the Area Planning Commission to rezone, again, ag to ag 2. There was some remonstrance, there was some concern about the impact it could have on the area. Petitioner has stated that they are only considering creating 2 more tracts of ground other than the existing residents on the property. They did look at it from all aspects of highway access, soils on the property, and also drainage with the pond on the property. And again, unanimous 8-0. We didn't have everybody there, if I remember right. No, we had 9-0.
Yeah, as you say.
Recommendation.
Steve Snyder for Greg Kralis, I agree. Very good report, Dan, thank you. I don't think there's anyone,
Wow.
but it, as Greg put it, in the 6 years he's owned the property, there have been like 8 residences constructed within half a mile of it. So it's an area that is larger lots, residential use, with that taste of agriculture that's a part of A2. What this will end up being is the existing house on 1 lot, and then 2 lots, roughly 1.48 acres each, that would be sold off, a 3-lot subdivision that the Plan Commission gets to review before it's approved.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Anybody here this morning to speak in favor? Any of those opposed? Okay, we'll close it to the public.
Make a motion that we accept the unanimous recommendation of area plan.
Second.
So we got a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote this morning, please.
Bob Conley, aye?
Brad Jackson, aye.
Carrie Gruninger, aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Okay, any further business come before the commissioners this morning? If not, we'll see you all back here on March 29th. Thank you.
The recording has stopped.